Picture this. You step out of a private elevator into an apartment that doesn't have 1 floor or 2 floors. It has 5. You climb a staircase past your own cinema, past a kitchen on every level, and you walk out onto a rooftop terrace perched more than 500 feet above the Mediterranean. And there, waiting for you, is a circular infinity pool with a water slide that spirals you down to the dance floor below. The asking price for this one apartment was reported at close to $400 million. That is not a typo. $400 million for a place to live. Today I want to take you on a trip, because the most expensive penthouse in the world isn't really one address. It's a contest, fought out at the very top of the skyline in a handful of cities where the richest people on Earth quietly compete to live higher and pay more than anyone has ever paid before. So let me show you the very top floor of the planet, city by city, all the way up to the single most expensive penthouse ever priced. And trust me, the higher we go, the more absurd it gets. Let's start where the record was actually broken. New York City, specifically a stretch of Midtown Manhattan that real estate agents now openly call Billionaires Row, a cluster of impossibly thin, impossibly tall towers that cast their shadows clear across Central Park. These are some of the skinniest skyscrapers ever built, engineered for one purpose, to stack the wealthiest people in the world as high into the air as physically possible. And it was here, in January of 2019, that the most expensive home ever sold in the United States changed hands. The building is 220 Central Park South. The buyer was Ken Griffin, the hedge fund billionaire who runs Citadel, a man worth somewhere north of $40 billion, and the price he paid was $238 million. For an apartment, that record still stands today. Nothing sold in America has beaten it. So what does $238 million actually buy you? It buys a penthouse that spans 4 entire floors, around 24,000 square feet of space. That's roughly 10 times the size of the average American home, stacked in the sky above Central Park. It comes with formal entertaining halls under double-height ceilings, a private library, a screening room, multiple kitchens, staff quarters, and a wellness suite. And the view, looking straight up the length of Central Park, is considered by many brokers to be the single greatest residential view in all of Manhattan. Now here is the detail I love. For tax purposes, the city of New York values Griffin's penthouse at just over $9 million. He paid $238. The taxman says 9. That gap, that quiet little gap, tells you almost everything about how the very richest people own property. And Griffin wasn't even the first to break the New York record on this street. A few years earlier, just down the block at a tower called 157, the technology billionaire Michael Dell quietly paid around $100 million for the duplex penthouse at the top, which was itself a city record at the time. That's the thing about Billionaires Row. Every few years, someone simply writes a bigger check. But Griffin's record breaker isn't even the tallest home in this city. A few blocks away stands Central Park Tower, the tallest residential building on the entire planet, rising 1,550 feet into the air. And near the top of it sits a penthouse that holds a record of its own. At 1,416 feet up, spread across the 129th, 130th, and 131st floors, it is the highest home in the world. No one on Earth lives higher than this. The triplex covers more than 17,000 square feet, and it opens onto the highest private outdoor terrace ever built. When it first hit the market, the asking price was a cool $250 million. Now let's cross the Atlantic, because London plays this game just as hard. In the heart of Knightsbridge, looking out over Hyde Park, stands a building called One Hyde Park, widely described as the most expensive apartment block in Britain. It was the brainchild of the Candy brothers, Nick and Christian, in partnership with the former Prime Minister of Qatar. And when it opened, it didn't just break the London record, it shattered it. Before One Hyde Park, the best homes in London sold for maybe £2,500 per square foot. Here, prices reached £10,000 per square foot for the first time anywhere in the world. And the crown jewel was the penthouse. Around 16,000 square feet, it sold for £140 million, roughly $222 million at the time. The buyer was Rinat Akhmetov, then the richest man in Ukraine. And he reportedly spent tens of millions more just on the interior fit-out before he'd even moved in. The residents here get hotel-style service piped in from the Mandarin Oriental next door, panic rooms, bulletproof glass, and a private underground tunnel connecting them to the hotel's spa. It is less an apartment building and more a fortress for the ultra-wealthy, hidden in plain sight in the middle of one of the world's great cities. Now let's fly to the desert, because no tour of extreme wealth is complete without Dubai. And Dubai, true to form, has been smashing its own records at a staggering pace. In December of 2025, a penthouse known as the Sky Mansion inside the new Bugatti residences in Business Bay sold for 550 million dirhams. That's about $150 million, and it instantly became the most expensive penthouse ever sold, not just in Dubai, but in the entire Middle East. This thing is enormous, around 47,000 square feet, which makes Ken Griffin's New York penthouse look almost modest by comparison. We're talking about a private car lift that brings your Bugatti right up into the residence, a private pool, and finishes designed in partnership with the hypercar brand itself. Just a couple of years earlier, a penthouse at the Como Residences on the Palm had set the previous record at 500 million dirhams. In Dubai, records don't last long. They get broken almost as fast as they're set. So we've climbed through New York, London, and Dubai. We've seen $238 million actually paid, $250 million asked, and $150 million desert palace in the sky. But there is one penthouse that towers over all of them in the most unlikely little country on Earth. And to see it, we have to go back to where this story started. Monaco. Monaco is the second smallest country in the world. You could walk across the entire nation in under an hour. It has no income tax, which is exactly why it has more millionaires and billionaires packed per square mile than anywhere else on the planet. And because the land is so impossibly scarce, the only way to build in Monaco is up. That brings us to the Odeon Tower. Standing 170 meters tall, around 558 feet. It was the first skyscraper Monaco had allowed in over 30 years, and it remains the tallest building in the entire principality. Developed by the Marzocco family and completed in 2015, it holds 49 floors of pure exclusivity, and crowning the very top of it is the Sky Penthouse. The whole tower is a feat of engineering in its own right. It packs in 259 residences, a wellness center with its own spa and swimming pool, and 10 underground levels holding more than 500 parking spaces, all carved into a sliver of Monaco hillside that barely existed before they built it. This is the one. The penthouse the Guardian newspaper once flatly called the most expensive penthouse in the world. It sprawls across roughly 3,500 square meters. That's nearly 38,000 square feet, spread over 5 floors at the summit of the tower. There's a kitchen on every single level. There's a private health center, a cinema, and that rooftop crown I told you about at the very start. A circular open-air infinity pool ringed by views of the entire Riviera, with a water slide spiraling down from the dance floor to the water. The reported price tag has been quoted anywhere from $335 million all the way up to $400 million. And here is the strange, almost poetic twist. That same tower, with the most expensive penthouse on Earth at the top, also contains more than 150 social housing apartments lower down, entered through a completely separate door. So in one single building, you have families living in subsidized housing and hundreds of feet above their heads. An apartment worth nearly $500 million, with a swimming pool floating in the sky. The penthouse was reportedly so expensive that for a long time it simply sat there, waiting for a buyer rich enough and bold enough to take it. So let me settle the question. Which one is truly the most expensive penthouse in the world? If you mean the most expensive ever actually sold, the crown belongs to Ken Griffin and his $238 million home in New York. But if you mean the highest price ever placed on a penthouse, the most expensive ever priced, then the throne belongs to Monaco, and that gravity-defying 5-floor apartment with the rooftop pool, somewhere around $400 million. Either way, think about what that number really means. For the price of just one of these apartments, you could buy a fleet of private jets, a brand new super yacht, and still have change left over for a small private island. And yet a handful of people on this planet looked at $400 million and thought, yes, for the right view, for the right address, for the simple thrill of living higher than anyone else, that is a price worth paying. So I'll leave you with this. Out of every penthouse I've shown you today, New York's record breaker, London's fortress in the sky, Dubai's desert mansion, and Monaco's crown jewel, which one would you choose to call home? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip to the very top of the world, stick around, because here there is always something even more expensive just around the corner.